Okay, well, welcome guys to lecture 3. This is the first day of week 2 materials. So to just iterate the schedule for the for this week and for the next week, this is for the campus students. Your project is due tonight. Hopefully, you're either done with it or very close to being done with it. I really want to make you the push that you're putting heavy work into the project for week 2 today. So ideally, the whole point is here is getting ahead so that week 3 hits, you're either working on pushing further in my class or pushing your own projects or whatever like that. So it gives you an entire week of developing your own content. So if you fall a little behind today, then put some extra time in tonight. When you go home, try to finish up and hit the goals so that you're not rushing next week to get those done on there. That being said, so for the online students, your project is still due on Sunday, but this lecture will get a lecture ahead on there. And then next week, we're really going to get ahead. So I'll repeat this again when we come in on Tuesday, but just to let you guys know. So your projects for online campus aren't that far apart with the due dates, but next week it is going to change quite a bit on there. Okay. So, also another thing is for the it is the same schedule. For you guys, it's the same schedule. You're still due on, the projects are always going to be due on Sunday for online because you guys don't have Hall of Fame where the the campus students do. So we'll be in lecture 3 today, which is week 2 material. And on Tuesday, we'll be on lecture 4, which is the final lecture for week 2. And then on the Thursday and Friday, we'll be on week 3. So we'll be a full week ahead for the online students when we go the end of next week on there. But in the same sense, your due dates do not change. I just didn't want you to get confused anymore that the lectures are getting ahead of where you're at. If you do online, if you do decide to push forward and do more content, like you want to go into controls, let's say you got your joints in week 1 passed, make sure to save and go into your week 2 area if you want to do that. I would actually send your stuff to critique to me first, and then I'll give you the go-ahead to move ahead. Okay? Do you guys online have any questions? I want to kind of hear a yes, you guys are good. Or at least, you don't have to say yes, you can just say yes. Okay, good. Nader, are you good? I figured I didn't want to crush your guys' schedule because I didn't see the need on it. Okay, I'm going to assume that's good. Okay, so that being said, I am going to download the notes for today, and I am going to go into week 2's material. So week 2, if you're moving on to week 2 for online and for you guys for campus, we have an entirely new file for week 2. So every week I have a new project file for you guys to work off. So I have a CRI project 2. And you'll see inside here, we have 2 files on this week. We have a rabbit file and we have an IKFK file. The rabbit file is worth 90% of your grade and the IKFK is worth 10% of your grade. But when we look at the rabbit file, this is going to be a file that will be animated ready by the end of this project. Between the joints and the controls, this would be something you could pass to an animator and have them start working. So you'll notice that the character no, I'm like mine's still going. Okay, so you notice that we have our character, and this looks like a lot of week 1 material, but you'll notice it has proxy. It's actually cut up into pieces. So it's not a single bind on your character. The reason why I'm having you work in a new file is if you made mistakes laying out joints, like we can go over how you can fix those and things like that when I do the video critiques for your project when I grade them. But the point here is that I want to make sure you're focusing on controls this week or for this project. And to me, joints and basic binding is a first process of rigging. You're always going to start that off. However, if you go into mocap, you won't even do this pass. This control pass, you're going to skip it and just go binding and make sure everything's bound properly. Because the controls are being controlled by the mocap on there. Now, on the other hand, if you're actually doing hand-keyed animation, then you do need the controls on there. So these are really two separate processes that we need. You could go from joints right to bind, or you can go from joints to controls and then the bind, either or you can go from joints to bind to controls and vice versa. You do not have to go in the same order. Joints have to be first, but you don't have to go in the same order. So we are going to work on this file, and the reason why I did controls on week 1 is because we had time to do it. I didn't think we had time to introduce controls this week, so I covered basic controls last week, which is really the control pass. So I added a little extra on week 1 than I normally would. But we put those. So these are basic FK controls. Today we're going to learn how to do more automated controls that can make one control that can solve for multiple joints, and different ways of doing that, like doing fingers and doing that. So we're going to be mainly focusing on rigging the upper body, the clavicles, the arms, the hands, the fingers, the legs, and then making this guy ready for animator so you can push it to an animator and they can literally start animating this. You do not have to have a bind to have the character start animating it. A good example of this is Po from How to Train a Dragon, not Train a Dragon, Kung Fu Panda. His belly is a dynamic element that they had to rig as a character. It was its own thing. But they still wanted the animators to block out the animation and start working on their character while they researched and developed that system. So if you ever look at the behind the scenes on it, you'll see Po with a proxy system with them all cut up on there. And then the animator can block it out, move animation, move motion around, and then they could actually swap in the skinned one and then swap out the one that has the belly jiggle and stuff like that. So that's something that you can run in passes. You don't want the animator sitting there waiting for the control to be done, the control system to be done. Like you don't want, or better yet, you don't want the animator waiting for the most advanced systems to be in there, when most bipeds have a very similar system. Okay, so that's what we're going to rig on this one. Then the other scene is the IKFK scene, and you're only going to be required to build the actual constraining system on the left arm. As you'll notice, the left arm on here has an IK and an FK system on it, and your job is going to be to blend between the two. For extra credit, you can actually rig the right arm entirely to solve for that system. Okay? So that's pretty much what it is. The reason is that you need to know how to do the blending system. And you need to know how an IKFK system is built. But the reason why this is not, there's two reasons why I don't have this in our main rig. One, time. We have two main labs to get this done with. You can definitely get the control system for the upper body and finish in those two labs. But normally the IKFK system itself takes a full lab to do. Also, how many people actually use the FK system on the FK-IK switch? I know you guys have seen them in the systems. Have you ever actually switched over to FK and actually animated? You're like, this one. It's actually, you're the first one in like 3 months to do that. The point is, none of my animators that I work personally use it. So I think it's more of a luxury system in there for this case because my guys don't use it. Now, if my animators did use it, I would absolutely put it in there. But like I said, if mine did not need that, so I just put in what it was required onto it. I'm always talking to my animators. I'm not getting paid to put extra systems in there. I'm getting paid to get them so they can do their job. You know, if you have nitroglycerin in your car and you never use it, what's the point of having it in? It's more likely to become a problem more than the benefit on there. So that's what we're kind of going on there. So you will have to do the left. So let me show you a finished version of this so you can see the entire rig. Okay, let's see. Let's go for it. Let's go to it here. Okay. Okay, so here's Valerie's one. Okay, so here's a finished one. Animator ready, meaning I can grab the master control and move the whole character around. You can only move what is actually, I can't scale it because we don't have a scaling system in here. I can't select the geometry accidentally because I know you animators love to accidentally grab geometry instead of controls. Joints are not visible. You see the controls are colored based on their side. And the attributes, the controls only have attributes that you need animated. So this one can only translate, so that's all it's there. As you can see, the upper bodies here, we got our clavicles. And you can translate those guys up. They move with the back. We got the arm system, which is an IK system, and its pole vector, which is his elbow. We have our hand, which we can rotate it down, and we got our finger curls in here. Okay. And stuff like that. Cool. So that's the upper body. The upper body, the clavicles were 10, the arm is worth 15, and the hand is worth 25 on that. How do I know that? Well, because we have I have a rubric. The rubric out here, as you can see, shoulders are 10, arms are 15, hands are 25. Then we go to the lower body, which is legs are 30%, and the cleanup, which making it animated ready, is worth 10. So let me look at the. Here's the legs. These are 30% of your grade. You can see I can rotate it. She did make a mistake here. She went a little too crazy with the lock and hiding of her controls. You should be able to rotate from the ankle here. But you can do this one, but that's not entirely what I wanted on there. So she probably got a 99 on this project. So you can grab onto the ball. You can rotate it like that. You can grab the knee and move the knee around like that. So those are that's the legs and cleanup. So this is worth 90% of the grade. Okay. Again, she has she does have her IKFK scene in here too. Question is, did she do extra credit? She did do extra credit on this side, but you can see on this side here, she even did cleanup on this file. If I move it down, she even hid the actual other system, so I can move between IK and FK here. See? And she rigged this side and got the extra 10 points for extra credit. Cool. Again, this is extra credit, and it screams in the background. Do this. Extra credit is that. Okay? We're going to cover this on Tuesday. Cool? Yes. What do you mean? Yeah, if you get above 100, you'll go to your lowest grade. Yeah. So it is very possible to get 100% on this project because it's a lot of yes and no type of thing. Did you get this right? Did you get this right? Some of the times, like not locking and hiding or stuff like that, she got like a 99. So yeah, that was a good question. She got 109 on this. The 10% I just wouldn't apply it here, and I'd wait until whatever project she got the lowest grade on, I would apply it to that. Yeah. You save it, and you save it as a separate file. Because this actually is, this one actually doesn't have the other arm. You have to build it from scratch anyway. Now, on the other scene, if you do extra credit on the other scene, there are some options in the prior scene. You just put it in there. The main thing is I do not want you doing IKFK on the main character unless you get approval from me first. Okay? Because there's a lot of starting points that you have to do to fix that. And the reason why, normally I tell you if you want to do the IKFK on the main character, let's say you're a rigging student and you want to practice this in your system, because guess what? Rigging students need to know how to do this. Well, rigging discipline students, that's what I mean. So that being said, what I would do is I'd tell you to do it on this scene, and then I would have you save an alternate file on the main rabbit, and then strip the system out and do it on that one. I wouldn't want you to contaminate your grade if you didn't get it done right or break it type of thing, because you will have to redo a bunch of things to get this implemented in the other character. Okay. Cool. Let's go and look at that's good one. Okay, so I got a new scene open, and I want to talk about, I want to start off our area about IK and FK systems. Not switches, just IK and FK. So if I go here and I draw a series of joints, 1, 2, and I draw another series of joints, 1, 2, 3 here. Actually, I take this back. Let me do this way. I'm going to do 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do another one. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I got 2 joint chains on here. Both these systems right now are FK systems. FK stands for forward kinematic, or more simply, they're actually a rotation-based system. So if I grab any joint on here and I rotate it, that is an FK system. The benefit of FK systems is they have perfect arcs. The problem with it is you can't pin a system down. Like for instance, let's say I want this joint to be right here. I have to kind of counter animate everything to match it, like that. And then if I want it down here, or if I need to move this joint here, everything moves together. Because FK systems are hierarchy-based systems. Something done to the parent affects all the children. So this guy's a child, so if I move the first parent, everything moves. The other system is inverse kinematic, or IKs. They're actually down here. I'm going to go over creating IKs in a second. So now this has an IK. The nice thing about an IK is I can say, hey, this IK is right here. And all of a sudden, if I move my arm, you can actually adjust where this point is. It's still, the whole system is moving together because I have to lock it down. I'm going to cover that in a second. But if I want to move this up here or down here, it's very easy to do that. Like that. It also gives you the ability to pin a system down, which I can't do this just until I connect it to a control on there. Actually, I could do that real quick. Okay. So let's say I create a circle, which is a valid control. Like that. Let's say I freeze transforms. And I'm just going to parent the IK underneath here. Like that. So watch, I can move this control around to move my IK, and watch when I grab my arm. You see how it stays pinned there? That's something you just can't do with FK. It's not to say FKs are horrible systems. They're not, because there are downsides of IKs. First of all, IKs can explode. If your orientation and your values aren't clean on your joints, they will freak out. And they'll put really bad values. And the worst part about it is they're very passive aggressive. They don't blow up until they're really pushed to a point where they say, that's it, I'm done. I'm done. And they'll just go crazy. Like for instance, let's say you're moving a character's IK around across his body, and you tweak it a little bit more than it wants, it could just flip out for no reason. And it's very hard to understand why it's doing it at that point if you didn't rig the character yourself. So it can be hard sometimes to find when IKs are broken. You can break it so IKs just literally explode, but in most cases, it will put it down there, but it'll put really weird, funky values all over the place. So that being said, another thing IKs are really bad with is they cannot invert themselves. Like if I move this up, you see how I can't move it past? It can only lock out. It is impossible, mathematically impossible, to invert the elbow of an IK. Where FK is like, I can do this all day. It is no problem. Okay? So when would you ever need that? This is kind of one of the reasons for an IK-FK switch. Anybody watch old Bugs Bunny cartoons? Like those old 20s and 30s when he was playing baseball and things like that. And he would do this thing where he'd wind up and he would pretty much run around the pitcher's mound and everything like that. And he would pull his arm back. And an old technique of 2D animation is to kind of invert the elbow to give a quick frame and then bring it back. And it gives this quick snap type of look. In 3-dimensionals, we call that a broken rig. Madagascar is very famous for doing that. Their rigs, they'll literally take the character and then invert their limbs and bring them back from the next frame, and you don't see it. You don't see the inversion, but you see the effect onto it. It creates this quick snap effect. That's why that if you definitely look at the first one, the animation has this really quick sharpness to it. That's deliberate. They were aiming for that on that. So that's something you could actually go when your character's arm goes to an extreme point like this. Like let's say Bugs Bunny's pulling back like this. You can do an IK for that. It looks like that was inverting. It was not. And you come like this. You can switch this to go to the FK, and then the FK can actually extend back like this. And then when Bugs Bunny, he inverts his elbow, and then when he comes back up to throw the baseball, you can actually switch back to IK when it comes back past this point on there. How often do you do something like that? Most of my animators don't do stuff like that very often. So unless the scene requires it, I'm normally not that big. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't expect IK-FK systems in your rigs, especially if it's something you might use. But like I said, my animators immediately didn't use it, so it was easier. So I could justify it saying, hey, are you guys going to use this? Is this something we need immediately? You need to know how to do it if the need arises. So that's why I'm kind of doing it on here. So it's a benefit too. If I had a third day, I would definitely have you put it in. But that being said, I do not, so I'm not going to cry over something I do not have. Cool. Okay, so now I'm going to get rid of this because I want to talk about IKs for now. Get rid of this guy, and I'm going to create a 2-joint on this side like this. Okay, so you create an IK by going into skeleton, IK handle, and then when you go onto the tool, you click your first joint followed by your last joint, like this. Boop. And there goes an IK. Very easy to do. You can only draw an IK on a single joint chain. You can't draw an IK between 2 different joint chains. It does not work like that. Not saying you can't build something that can do that, but unless you're like, really good linear algebra and stuff like that, you're probably not doing that. Okay, I'm going to delete this because there's a little bit more that goes on to IKs. If I go into my skeleton and IK handle tool, you'll notice in here there's something called current solver. This is the thing solving how the IK is affecting the joint chain. There's 2 IKs, single chain and rotate plane. They're also, in the past, were called SC and RP for single chain and rotate plane. What's the difference between these 2 IKs? Single chain does not solve for the elbow. In other words, it does not allow you to twist the elbow up and down. Rotate plane does. Well, why don't we just use rotate plane? Mathematics. It's more complicated to solve for the elbow. If you're never using the elbow, or your system does not have an elbow in it, it's better to use a single chain because you have less overhead. IKs, when they're really pushed to the brink on their math, love to freak out and flip around. They are very complicated math that's going into solving these things. How we're setting up, we're trying to make it simple. But when it gets more complicated, you want that. So I'll go to single chain solver, and I'm going to click on my first joint, and you see the little reticle that popped up like that, and I select on my last joint, and I get my IK handle. Okay? I can tell what type of IK I have by down here. It says SCIK, or single chain. I'm going to go back in the IK, and I'm going to switch from single chain to rotate plane. Same way. Click my first joint, followed by my last joint. Pretty easy to create IKs. I could have just told you to do that right off the bat, and it would take no time. But this is going to be the podcast that you're going to go back if you're interested in rigging or you're interested in animation and want to learn more about IKs. You're probably going to go look back at this one again later on when you've done this some more. And a lot of stuff I'm telling you now is going to be like, oh, he completely told me why on that. It's the first time doing it, so it's hard to comprehend it. But I still want to give you all the information on what's going on here. So with any system, I just came from portfolio class, and I drive my students nuts because they're like, I asked them, okay, you put a lot of joints in your back. Why? Like I had one student, he put 3 joints for his leg, and he had a separate leg and foot. He had 2 joints for his foot, or 3 joints for his foot. And I was like, why'd you do that? And he's like, well, I thought that was right. I'm like, well, I want you to explain to me why you thought it was right. And he didn't have a really good reason for it, because I know for me that's going to cause more complications, but you don't know that. So you should be able to back up your explanations onto it. So the more you understand your systems, and the better animators can communicate to the riggers. If they say, hey, I don't need an IK for this, or I do need an IK for this, or I do need an IK-FK switch for this, you need to be able to explain your responses to it. So the better you understand the mechanics behind it, the better you can argue that. Or the better yet, the better you can explain your process to that rigger, the more we can work and rig things exactly the way you need it for. We're engineering a car for you. If you like the turn signal on the left side of the actual turnstile because it allows you, because you're left-handed and allows you to switch really quickly, if you explain that properly to me, I have no, oh, that's not a big deal. It's pretty easy to do that. But everybody else uses it on the right side. But if you're going to be working with it, it's your car. Believe it or not, the rigger is only working with the character for a very small period of time. The animator is working with a much longer period of time. So it's like, well, I like to actually have like a stick shift in the car, and like I don't even know how to drive manual. Probably don't want to put an automatic in that car. Okay, so that being said, we got our IKs. Let's observe. First thing is this is a control. IKs are controls. So if it's a control, is this animator ready? Grabbing this IK and moving around, is that acceptable for an animator? What's that? Why not? What's that? Well, I mean, it is a control. Well, why can't I use this for a control? It's inside of it. What was the other one? It does. You can grab it, move it around. If I grab that, it does. You're absolutely right. It's hard to select. That is definitely a valid argument. There's another bigger one on here. Look at the channel box. Is that a good? Is that a clean, valid? So what's your reaction here? Freeze transforms. Andrew got it right. If I freeze transforms on this, not only did it not freeze transforms, it changed values. So it goes, no, I kind of like my values. Here's a rule of IKs. They will always have weird values. Always. So does that make them valid controls? No. And it's inside the geometry. You're absolutely right. Or right on the IK. So IKs are never valid controls. We will need to make a control that's manipulating another control. Does the animator ever see this IK? No. So do they care if there's 9 zillion underpinning control systems? No. Our job is to make the system look as simple as possible, even if it's not. Your car is not a simple thing, but almost everybody knows how to start their car. I didn't say you knew how to drive your car, but everybody knows how to start their car, at least. You know, being an Orlando driver kind of rubs off on everybody. Okay, so that's one problem. Both of these are going to have values, some worse than others. You will also notice that single chain matches the orientation. You see how the IK is pointing down the x-axis, but the rotate plane is not. The rotate plane is actually world. That's just a byproduct. Don't worry too much about that. Okay, so we know we're going to have to be able to control. Now here's another thing I wanted to point out. What is an IK doing to the joints? It is just rotating the joints. That's it. It's not translating, it's only rotating. Now this is kind of an absurd question, but why is that important? If it only rotates a control, what precedents have you been doing since week 1? Well, this week, but yeah, week 1. If I move this IK up, like that, and look, watch when I grab my first joint. Do you see it has values here? If I told you it does not translate joints, what does that mean if the IK explodes? Or it doesn't work right? Well, it doesn't work, that's correct. Well, like, if I saw this as bad on here, let's say you come out and there's something wrong with your car. You want to get it back to a state before it was broken, correct? Is it hard to do that with this system now? If only rotation is affected on joints. Not the most confident answer in the world. You are correct. The 50 cent, you're on the correct on the 50%. The reason why I say that, if I delete the IK, can't I just zero out my rotations on my first joint to get it back to where it was? Yes. If it was clean, yes. But how much am I harping that your joints are clean values on your rotations, that you freeze transform before you do it and things like that? Well, the point is, it should never not be clean. I haven't never indicated a state where it's okay not to have clean joints onto it. It's like that cracking down foundation. It's fine. It's fine. That leak in that roof. It's fine. We'll just put some spackle on top of it. It'll be perfect. You won't even notice anything until I leave, and it's gone. So yes, I can. If your IKs explode, you can delete your IKs, zero out your joints for your rotations, and it goes right back to where it was. That is really important because IKs do explode from time to time. Maybe you actually orient them in a weird way and you put your IK in there and just snaps in a weird spot. Or the animator's really, really going to town on the rig and ends up breaking the rig. Getting angry at animators for breaking rigs is like getting angry for a dog for chewing up a chew toy. You give a chew toy for a dog to play with it, just like an animator is to a rig. They will break it because they're trying to emote and they're pushing the boundaries of what that rig can do. I've had rigs personally that looked like they were mangled to death. And one of my jobs was to try to get it back so they could still animate on top of it. So zeroing it out and cleaning it up and getting it back to before. You know, as you rotate joints, they get more corrupted and corrupted. That's where gimbal lock comes from. You know, and then eventually you want something to reset your values. So isn't it nice to be able to zero things out and get them back to reset? Yes, that's what I'm harping on, having things clean. Okay, so that being said, this guy's too. Now you say, well, if I do this, it's got to be doing more than rotating. No, it's not. Look, rotating, rotating. So if I delete this, this is one of those things where I don't think you're going to understand the importance of this until like if you started rigging on your own and things like that. That's actually a really, really fundamental thing to rigging. That getting back to default is everything because you will break things. You will. As a rigger, you'll break things, and as an animator, they'll break your rigs. And you need to know how to reset it. And if those values don't change, you can do that pretty easily. Okay, cool. So that was fundamentals of arcade. Now we want to go to a more practical example of this. At the end of the day, how hard is it to create arcade? I could have done that right there, and I could have been done with IKs. That's creating IKs, but you need to know your fundamentals. Again, this is a good podcast to go back and listen to after you've done some more controls and going through, because it'll be one of those things where, oh, he just completely told me that, like, way long time ago. It's also a big reason why I tell you guys to always look and watch fundamental videos over again. Like when you're in your animation classes, look at your fundamental of animation podcasts and videos. He's telling you the secrets of the universe while he's doing that, but you can't comprehend it at that point. You learn more from your fundamental videos than you do from the advanced ones. Why? Because they're not talking about those things in the advanced ones. They're talking about keystrokes and hotkeys and short techniques and all these different types of things that the advanced ones breeze all past that because they figure you know it already. It's the same thing with speed sculpting. They don't talk about proportions and character and design and everything. They don't talk about the planes of the face in the advanced ones. They kind of do, but they don't go over it nearly as much detail as they do in the basic ones. Basic sculpting videos and things like that, talking about how you get proportion of the different parts of your body and everything right. So it's always good to actually look back at those. You'll glean a lot more information than you thought. You don't have to be super, super comprehending everything. You could just sit by and just have it on the background and watch and go, oh, holy crap, he's completely talking about that. I didn't even know about that. I learned more stuff from those than you can believe. Okay, so now let's go into our first. I'm going to go into my ARM system, and I'm going to go into I'm going to go into the Yeti character. Now this character has a lot more volume than the rabbit character, which is normally a problem, right? However, does our character have more than 2 joints in the clavicle? No. How about the arm? Of course, our arm has to have 27 joints in it, right? No, it has 3. The hand? Point is here, where am I getting at with this? Wait, this is actually building controls. The point of what I'm getting at here is that there's really no fundamental difference between the rabbit character and this character, except for the skin. Am I dealing with the skin now? No, I'm not. That's the binding. Joints matters about the skin. Binding matters. Binding, connecting the geometry to the joints, that matters to the skin. Controls don't. Controls are just moving the skeleton. You ever see a skeleton of an overweight person, and you see it's like, it's like the skeleton is no bigger, no matter how much fat is on the person. It's kind of like, oh, it makes me want to get on a treadmill like immediately. So I'm like, ugh. You know, because it's like you just see all the weights being put onto the bones and everything on that. But outside of being someone being taller or shorter, and the proportions being a little different, they're pretty much fundamentally the same thing on there. So that's where the important thing from that is. Okay, so we want to draw IKs on here. Now, unless you're Chuck Norris, you probably don't have an elbow in your clavicle. So we don't need to bend the elbow or something like that. Well, apparently, contrary to belief, Chuck Norris has a fist under his beard. So that's a true thing. That's a fact. And he can count the pie. That was my favorite Chuck Norris joke. Chuck Norris can count the pie. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to go into skeleton. Create IK handle. So since there is no elbow in here, we're going to change to a single chain. We click our first joint, click our last joint, boom. And we're going to call this our left clav. You can also call it shoulder. I'm fine with that too. Clav IK. Okay? Really nasty values on this one now, but you can't get rid of those. Okay? Now, we want to create an IK here, but we do have a problem with this one. It is going to be a rotate plane, but you see how the last joint they're intersecting with the hand joint? I need to be able to grab that. Now, it won't freak out. It'll just tell you, hey, I can't do an IK to another joint chain. So you can click and click and click and get angry and angry and angry at it. But there is actually a faster way here. If you find the IK joints that you want, or you want the joints you want to apply your IK to, you can apply it in the outline. This is actually my preferred method for drawing IKs. I click on the first joint, I hold down Command and select whatever my last joint is. And that creates an IK like that too. I just find it easier to do it that way. But they both work. Left, arm, IK. Yes? What's that? What do you mean? Well, you have multiple IKs in your arm? No. That's fine. Correct, Andrew. Okay, so now our IKs are in here. Cool? Any questions on that so far? Wasn't very hard, right? I know you can guys do that in a couple minutes. It's actually, I'm not making it look simple. It actually is pretty simple to create IKs. It's hard to break. Now, it's hard to break IKs. I'm not even going to show ways that people have broken it in the past because you have to really work at breaking it, like really work. Okay, so let's move into our next scene, which is actually building controls, because we already established that you really don't want to be animating IKs directly. So I got two controls here. I got an arrow and I got a box or a cube. And I'm going to duplicate my arrow and I'm going to move it up. I'm going to rotate it down so it's pointing down. I'm going to move it over. And I'm going to pretty much point it at my shoulder like that. Okay? You see how it kind of disappears when it's its vantage point? So I like to rotate it a little bit either up or down. And that's because how often are we going to animate from the side of the character? Quite a lot. How often are we going to animate from here? Not quite as much. Can I make a three-dimensional control for this? Yes. Well, like you could trace over. Say. Right. You can't use you can't use like a polygon or something like that. Or sorry, you can't use a polygon cube or a NURBS cube. You're correct on. Well, then there's two shapes. You have to combine them. So if you do that, yes, but you don't want to say, which one is the shoulder today? You don't want to do that. So that would be irritating, unless you hate the animator. But the animators, it's like customer service. It's up to your it's to your benefit to solve the customer's problem as quickly as possible, because otherwise they're coming back to you over and over and over again. So I always ultra nice and extra helpful just to get the problem solved. Okay, so I'm going to freeze this. So FK systems, we were very picky about pivot points, right? I was like, pivots. I was like screaming, pivots. IKs, not so much. Why? Because we're not orbiting around a center point. FKs rotate. IKs translate. You grab IKs and translate them up and down like this. So I'm not orbiting or rotating around something, so it's really up to design of where we want the pivot point. Would you want the pivot point on the arrow or on the joint? It's actually not a wrong answer. What would you want? As an animator, what would you want? What would you find easier to select? On the shoulder? I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm going to say it's one of those things. I particularly like it up here because I grab it and I can just move it like this. Yes, I can do this. Like that. And then I can select here and I can do this. That's the same thing. I'm okay with either or. What I'm not okay is if you do one like this and do the other one where it's snapped in the middle. Pick one style and go with it. Okay. So I do like this one. This is going to be my left arm and my left clav. This is also what the animator sees. So if you find that shoulder is a better word for this, then you can type in shoulder icon like that. Okay. This is what the animator sees. So it is you want to be as clear as possible. So no abbreviations and things like that. You want to be obvious. Okay. So the other one we're going to do is this guy here. We're going to take our box. I'm going to duplicate this. Now in this case, why a box for the hand or for the arm? Well, yes, but couldn't you do it with an arrow or a circle? Very close. Yeah, it's easier to see it because how often are you going to grab the arm and move it around? Yes. So you want it to be very easy to grab. If it's invisible or stuck inside the geometry, you're not going to be happy. So again, this is all about ease of use. Now, even though the pivot point doesn't matter on this one, it's probably better if it's on the wrist because it just makes sense to be on the wrist. Because, yeah, I could put the pivot point like here. Because, yeah, I hate the animator. I don't know, but you do want it normally on the wrist because it makes more sense. Okay, so I'm going to hide the geometry. I'm going to move the pivot point into position like that. I'm going to bring back the geometry because the visibility of this is everything. So I'm going to move this back a little bit. I'm going to scale it up and out like that. And it looks like I can see that from all vantage points. Now this is not for the hand, it's for the arm. We're going to talk about the hand in a little bit. Okay. So again, I want to freeze transforms on this. Did I freeze transforms on that? I did. This is going to be my left arm. Make sure you do delete history on these guys too. If they have history. When you duplicate, they don't have history. But yeah. Okay, cool. Any questions on that so far? No, pretty straightforward. What do you mean rotate it like that? Like this? Oh yeah, you can completely do that. Yeah, if you're being that picky onto it and you want to be like that, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that won't hurt it at all. The rabbit is actually more straight-armed, so that's why I kind of do it. But yeah. And you don't have to use a box. I'm not requiring boxes for translates and circles for rotates on there. If you get exotic with your controls or your controls are a little ugly, I'll just be like, your controls are ugly. And that'll probably be the end of it. As long as they function properly, they'll be okay. Especially this week because you're learning it. If you want to put sugar skulls for all your controls, yeah, I'll be like, your animator just stabbed you to death, you died. And things like that. But, it kind of goes from that. So now we need to connect these guys together. There's two ways we can connect these. They're both correct. We can parent IKs right underneath the control. Why? Because they're both controls. Can you parent controls to each other? Think about the back. Didn't you parent the back controls to each other? Back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the neck, to the head. Yeah, absolutely. So I can do that here. Didn't I mention that IKs were controls? Yeah. So I can say this is my child and my shoulder is my parent, like that. Yeah, it's supposed to be doing that. That is correct. Can I constrain these together? I'm going to unparent this. Remember I said about constraints? That something's being constrained or driven cannot need to be animated later. Is the animator ever going to grab the IK and animate it later? They're going to grab the IK directly and animate it? No. So I can use a constraint to it. So I could say driver or driver driven and do a parent constraint. Yes, indirectly it will be animated. You are correct. I know where you're going at with that. And see how it still works. So which one will I use? I really don't care as long as you're consistent. Now, I like parenting because it's faster in the system than constraints. Constraints are a little slower and they can break from time to time. That being said, the downside of parenting is it is moving the hierarchy, so it can be hard to find your IKs. So let's say you're doing a millipede. You kind of want to know all your IKs are in one spot, not under each control. Is this a problem here? No, it's not. Do I know riggers that constrain everything together like that? Yes. Do I know ones that parent it? Yes, because I actually do that. Which one not? Be consistent. That's all I care about. Don't use one shoulder with parent constraint and the other shoulder with parent. That will make me pissy. I will get angry at that. Because I want to see a reason why. Unless you have a good reason, which I would really like to hear that good reason. Okay, so I'm just going to parent them underneath it. It's fast, it's easy. My left arm is going to go, my left IK is going to my left arm, and boom. See? And we're almost done with these. Any questions about connecting IKs to controls? Hey, couldn't I have done this in like 10 minutes? Yes, I could have. But I want you to understand what the IKs are and what they represent, not just. What's that? Yeah. No, not just this. There's more than just this, but yeah. If we were just doing this, then I would have it done this week. It'd be fun. No, I do have more stuff because the hands are going to be more complicated. But, you know, I'm not trying to kill you guys completely onto it. I want to ease you in to surprise you to actually come by and be like, hatchet, and going to go from there. So it's like, you know, Jason doesn't like just jump out. He makes you feel like you're comfortable. And then, you know, then he hatched to the face. I take that back. It's a machete. You're going to be correct. He's a machete person. Okay, that being said, I do need the elbow. So I'm going to make a new control, an arrow, and I'm going to snap it to the elbow. And I'm going to move it back, freeze it, scale it down, rotate it so it has an angle, and freeze it. This is our elbow. Left, elbow, icon. Now this system is a little weirder than the others. It's still part of the IK system. But this, which is called a pull vector, or the elbow, is really an aiming system. Matter of fact, it's actually done through a constraint. There's actually a pull vector constraint. So what it's going to do is this pull vector constraint is going to twist the elbow, which has to be a rotate plane. See, it says RP here. But you twist, you see how it twists the elbow like that? The SDI does not do that. So we want this control, when we move it up, it actually will aim the elbow to this control. That being said, it's really important that your pivot point is not on the elbow joint. Because if it's on the elbow joint like this is wrong, this is wrong. This is like an infomercial when everything turns gray. This is wrong. Watch what happens when I move this over. You see how the control now is pointed, this is actually pointed in front of the elbow. That means the elbow is going to flip around to aim towards this. That's not what we want. We want it to be here. We want it to point to this on here. So a lot of times students get so locked into putting the control's pivot point on the joint that when they get to a pull vector, they do the same thing. That's not correct. Okay? So that being said, that's all you do for your pull vector. To connect it to our arm, it's going to be a constraint. This is going to be a driver, and the driven is going to be the IK, because the IK has the pull vector information on it. I just go up to constraint, pull vector. You see it does this little line, it does that type of stuff, and watch this. Okay. Cool. So your shoulders and your arms are almost finished on here. Well, not completely arms, but your arm system, not your hands, are almost done here. Any questions so far? You have a question. Let's see, it's going up. It's coming up. It's in your neck. Nope. Okay, that's fine. Not a question, more of a statement, but it's true. It's like a threat later. Okay, so that being said, I have one more thing on here, and this is actually very easy. I'm going to go to the final one on here, and it's this one here. So we got our arms here. So I mentioned earlier today that the IKs will actually pin down the system. So watch when I grab my shoulder and move it up. Remember it was flapping before? That's because we didn't have the arm IK in there. Like that, okay? However, now that we're pinning the systems down, the clavicles are pinned down too. Watch when I grab the back. Do you notice how the controls do not turn green on the actual shoulders? Watch what happens when I rotate these from side to side. You see it gets this weird shimmy effect on here? Shimmy. No, it shouldn't do that. It should actually be moving with it. You see it's like, it should be actually moving together. The whole chest should be moving back and forth. So these guys, now that they pin, have to be parented into the back system. So very easy. I grab my two clavicles, shift grab what I want to parent, hit P. P is a parent command. Normal parent. Remember, I'll never say parent constraint when I'm referring to parent. I'll always, every time I'm reparenting, I'll say parent. Every time I'm constraining, I'll always say parent constraint or constraining. Okay? So I'm going to shift grab what I want to parent it to, hit P, and now you see how it looks. It's supposed to just look like that. Let me show you what it looked like before, just so you get a point of reference. See? That was bad. This is good. Can I middle mouse drag them underneath them? Yes. Can I parent constrain these in together? It's actually a no voice. Who can tell me why you do not want to parent constrain the shoulders into the back system? No, they'll do that already. Do you want to constrain two controls together? Mm-hmm. Why? You're correct, but why? What happens when you put a constraint on something? What does it do to that thing that's actually has it? Well, isn't it being pushed and influenced by the other thing? Can you animate that the thing that's constrained anymore? Right, so if I constrain these, the shoulders are no longer animatable, which we don't want. Could I put a pad above the control and constrain the pad? Yes. If I needed to do something like that, that would be okay. But you can't constrain control to control. That's going to cause a problem because it invalidates that control. Okay? It's not that they would manipulate it, though. They're not that far off. It's just that you want to make sure that the thing that you're constraining, like let's say I say driver, do not do this. I'm warning, do not do this. Like huge alarm bells. If I say driver, driven, and do a parent constraint, and I grab my back, you see it's moving. That system is moving, but remember I have the blue bars on here? That's now locked out. So if I move this up and go, oh, I'm animating, and then move your back, watch what happens. Snap. It's now being spoken for. Again, if I put a pad above this and constrain the pad, yes, that would work. Okay? Are you doing that this month? No. But I'm teaching you how to take advantage of your systems. The more you know how these systems work, the more you can mess with them. Taking what I teach you and then trying to break it is what you're supposed to do. Because I'm going to take any system someone shows me, I'm going to try to change it around to use it someplace else. That's the way to learn how any of the systems work. If someone shows you topology on a certain area, you should try to apply that someplace else. Well, how does this give you a different effect someplace else? Because that's when you know if you really understand the information and how to make it your own. Okay? Same thing with tutorials. You should apply it to your own character as quickly as possible. Okay. Any questions on the IKs? It is very easy to do the shoulder and the arm system. It's 25% of your grade. It is very fast. It should not take you more than a half an hour to an hour to do that. It's just IK, control, control, parent, and that's it. Yes, I spent 30 plus minutes on this. So it shouldn't take you longer than I took the long way of doing that. And again, I have it documented pretty well. Okay? That being said, we're going to move into our next system that is definitely a lot more theoretical and a lot more difficult to work on. And it's actually going to be under our local world system. Okay, world versus local. So I have this scene here. Okay, so I have this control here. I'm going to duplicate it and snap it onto my back. I'm going to duplicate it and snap it and duplicate it and snap it and duplicate and snap it. Does this remind you of anything? Yeah, it's back system from last class. Could this be a tail or an antenna? Yes. Okay, so I go in here and I freeze these out. So this is my first, second, third, fourth, and fifth control. These are what are called world-oriented controls. I did not call them that last class at all. What does that mean? Well, down here we have our world orientation. Y is up, X is forward, Z is out to the left. See how it's the same thing right here? Y is up, X is forward, Z is out to the left. The joint, however, is not that orientation. X is up. It is a local orientation here. Okay, fine. Let's say I want to connect this control, my top back control, to my joint. And I go to constraint, parent constraint, and I'm going to apply. I want to show you what's really happening here. Let's say I move this around X. Do you see how I just moved this a negative 30 degrees on the X-axis? Right? Look at the joint though. The joint is not moving negative X is actually moving positive Y. Why? Because this offset, this maintain offset means I want to maintain a difference between the object that is the driver and the thing that's being driven. So it will convert those values to make them move together. Wait, does this mean that what we did for the back is wrong? No, it's not. Because this is a very simple system. We're not doing anything crazy. We're not spinning this around like an owl, like 180 degrees. We're not doing this like a hand where we're rotating and orbiting and moving around and everything like that. It's just a back. A back really doesn't have that much, locomotion onto it. It's a pretty simple system. So there's nothing wrong with doing a world orient controlled on the back that we covered last class. However, there are controls where this causes problems. Also, it does become more beneficial to make controls where they're matching the orientation because there's less work being done between the constraint and the driven joint. So let me show you. I'm going to delete that constraint, and I'm going to show you a situation where we do have a problem. Okay. So I'm going to create a control, an orb circle, like this. And I want to make a control for this guy right here. This is a tail. Okay? I'm going to move it over. I'm going to hold down V. I'm just going to snap it over like this. Okay. I want the control to look like this here, like that. Okay? And when I freeze it, you notice it goes back like this. Well, we have a problem here because watch what happens when I say driver and driven and do my parent constraint. When I do this, look at what's happening down here. You see how the joint's moving multiple values here? It's now between axes. Look, It wasn't a simple system. Do you see how this orientation is completely different than this one here? Like this one's facing this way, and this one's actually facing halfway between it. So if I look at this in the graph editor, something like this is a, that system's a nightmare. Even though it's only Y23, to figure out how to fix this when you have a foot floating is a real pain in the ass. You don't want that. Also, this is getting systems closer to gimbal lock underneath the hood. Wait, you can have a control get gimbal lock without the control itself getting gimbal lock? Yes. The constraint can get gimbal lock too. So when we do something like a wrist, do I ever want to have a control with world orientation on it? No. I want it local. So, okay, cool. We need to build a local one. No big deal. No sweat. Okay. Cool. Let me put that back so it's like this. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match it. Okay, so this is X down here, so I'm just going to rotate this around like this. Like that. Okay. Nope, not quite. Oh yeah, it's actually pretty close. It goes like this. I'll do that. Ignore that the control doesn't look very nice. We're going to give off that. Okay, so it's getting close. See, it's pretty close, like that. Is this an animator ready control? No, because the values are heinous. So how do I fix that? I freeze it, right? You're right, that's not going to fix it, but we're going to freeze it. Watch what happens when I freeze it. Plink. What? Why did it do that? Well, I did. It just froze it. Look, it was fine a second ago. Let me explain what freezing transforms really do. Freezing transforms looks at what's above it and says, I like that orientation. I'm going to match it. So what's above this control? World. That's why it goes here. Wait 1 second. So does that mean if I put something else other than world up there, it's going to match that? Yes. Absolutely. I got a little trick here. If I parent this control into the joint and I freeze it, it's going to match the joint's orientation, not world. Watch. Well, I mean, because think about this. Do you see anything above this control right now in the hierarchy? No. But there is something above it. There's always something above every control, everything, world, the very, very top. Like, no matter how close you think you are to, you're on the planet, there's always gravity. Something's pulling you down onto it. Even if you stand on top of things, above it, there's always going to be that gravity that's pulling you straight down. This is gravity. World is gravity. Okay? You can do that. I'm cheating here. I'm getting ahead of myself. I normally don't do this. But if I do parent this underneath, now when I say parent, I'm not talking about constraining. So if I grab this and I shift grab where I want to hit P, watch this. And I hit freeze, whoop, see it? Do you see how it didn't go crazy or anything like that? Does that look like an animator ready control? Well, here's the problem is I do have to eventually unparent this from the joint because we don't want our controls parented directly under the joint. So watch this. That's not animator ready anymore. How do I fix that? How do I buffer a control? How do I put something above it that started with a P that actually created some type of cartilage or connective tissue? Pad. We can create pads. I know it's obvious. It's like trying to explain that you go outside and the sky is a certain hue of a color that, just say blue. Goddamn, say blue. That's what it is. So exactly, pad. So that being said, we're going to do a padding system on here to do this. The pad is going to have the nasty values, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so let me create a circle. Okay, and I'm going to create another circle. I'm going to duplicate it like this, and this is I'm going to call this outer icon. I'm going to freeze that, and I'm going to call this guy inner icon. Okay, I'm going to parent inner underneath outer. My outer icon is 0, correct? My inner icon is 0 too. When I grab my outer icon and move it up 1 on Y, what is the value of my inner icon? Wait, 1? Why is it? Why is it 0? When you're you have your father's genes, right? Not gene injection, you have chromosomes and things like that. You might have the genes. I don't know. Maybe it's good close. I have no idea. That being said, you inherit genes from your family, right? Well, this is doing the same thing. Isn't this a child to the parent? So these values from here are being inherited to the child. So let's say you go and you buy an Xbox. See, it's 1 now on here. You buy some stuff. And you decide to move out. You're no longer inheriting your house from your parents. You're not living off that stuff, and you remember how great that was. You do that type of stuff. Watch what happens when I unparent this inner icon. Shift B. Do you see how now it's actually almost 2? Those values that you were being inherited from your parents are now no longer there. That's not completely accurate inheritance. I know that. Just ignore that for a second. But the point is that when values are actually moved from the parent, they're automatically propagated down to the children on there. And hence, why am I talking about this? Because I can use that outer ring to grab my garbage values from that I want for the local orientation, and then the inner icon doesn't have that stuff. Okay, let me show you. When I parent these back in, you'll notice that it actually, those values will disappear again. I'm going to 0. Oops, I did that the other way. Let's do there. That. Watch this now. If I 0 out my Y, and the right on top of each other, watch when I grab my control here and I move it over. I hold down V and snap it over there. Let's say I rotate it around to kind of match like this, and I rotate it this way. Like that. You see how it's pretty close? The 2 rings? See how they're pretty close to each other? Yes, you're absolutely right, Dennis. Look at the inner control. See how it's clean? Is this control that I selected right now animated ready? Yes. Now there is a problem here. What is the chances the animator is going to grab the ring on the outside instead of the ring on the inside? You lie. But yes, it's confusing. I wouldn't expect them. Pads will allow us to do that. Pads can be invisible that we can throw these values onto, and then the control that's inner in this case is now, you're not going to accidentally grab the other one. You only grab the one you want. So let's go back and do the right way on this. And I know this is confusing to beginning with, especially if you're not tech savvy, but do you think I have a podcast just for this? Yes. Absolutely. I will tell you when I do and don't have a podcast on it. So I'm going to create a circle like this, and I'm going to group it. Now I'm going to call this the group. I'm going to call this local 1, and I'm going to call my control icon 1, like that. Okay? Cool. I want to move this pad over to this joint perfectly. I can do that through a constraint for movement. Constraints will actually snap and move things around. Watch this. I grab my driver, and then I grab my pad as my driven. I turn off this maintain offset. Now it's no longer going to remember a difference. It's going to move one to the other. And watch what happens when I hit apply. See, it snaps it up there. I don't need this constraint. I just used it to move it. So I don't need this constraint anymore. I can delete it. Is this an animator ready control? Isn't that clean? Yes. Is it in position properly? Yeah, I mean, it could look a little better, but we can do that. Now we have our pad. Our pad has these atrocious values, but is the animator ever going to accidentally select a pad? Not unless they go into the outliner and they look for it. I can't fix that. If you go into your computer and you see the power supply and there's a giant yellow sticker that says, do not open, you'll be electrocuted, and you still open it, I'm sorry, I can't do anything more on it. Welcome to the Darwin Awards. I can't do anything more about that. So that being said, I only have so much, future-proofing from a system that I can. Okay? It's not rotated. Exactly. So watch this. I can move my control to look a little cleaner. And if I freeze it, see it goes right back to the orientation above it, right here. Can I do this to my control? Can I move it down like that? Yes, as long as I move the pivot point back. See? Do I have to do this for every FK control I'm doing in there? No, absolutely not. You got to do these for controls where the orientation really matters. It's very delicate. Wrists, fingers, anything that has an odd angle, like the tails, his ears, those are things you'd have to do FK systems on that are local oriented. But the back, yeah, that's not a big deal. If you can validate it, I'll let you do it. If you have a good backing and reasoning behind it, I'll completely let you do it. Okay? You're absolutely right. Now I got you, Adonis. It wasn't rotate, but now it is. Okay. Cool. I'm going to show you that again. And then I'm going to show you a fast way of doing it that's going to look like voodoo magic. And then that one's not on a podcast. And the point is, you got to know the long way of doing it. So I'm going to create a control. I have nothing selected. I create a control. I'm going to group it. I'm going to call this local 2. And icon 2. By the way, if you see a pad that says local in my system, you instantly know the orientation is matching something. If you see pad, it's not. It's world. That's just my naming convention. Okay, so I grab my driver, the thing that I want to match the orientation. I grab the pad, not the control. If I do this, I'm doing something wrong. You cannot grab the pad inside the perspective view. So you grab your driver, driven, and hit apply. Boom, snaps over there. I delete my constraint, and now I can actually position my controls so it's nice and clean. Okay, is that kind of making sense a little bit? Yeah, I kind of got to see it. I got to do it in practice. You are. I do have an integrated assignment on Tuesday that's going to have you do this for an example character for the ears. So you'll have some practice on this. Okay? Now let me show you the super fast, sneaky way of doing this. I am going to create a circle. I kind of already did this. Remember how I mentioned if you parent something under a joint that you can zero out, you can match it to orientation? Well, watch this. If I grab my child here, my control, and I shift select what I want to parent and hit P, you see how I have all these crazy values on here? Watch this. If I zero this out, it goes right to the parent. Remember I did that with the little 1 and 0 type of thing? So now, look at the orientation. It's perfectly matching. Here's a better thing is, look what, see it's how it's parented underneath the system? Little word to the wise, if you group something and it has a hierarchy above it, it matches that hierarchy above it. What do you mean by that? Watch this. If I group this, look, you see how it matched into the hierarchy? You saw the pivot point didn't go back to world? It literally made the group perfectly for our purposes. It's right there. So now I can just unparent it and it's all set. The pad has my crazy values and my control is clean. I'm going to show you that again. Like I said, I told you it's going to look like magic. It's going to look like I was like trying to pull one over on you guys. So watch. This is, I'm going to do this in real time. I create a control. I parent it underneath my target joint. I zero out my orientations. I'm going to group it and unparent it. Super fast. Yes, if you're trying to do this on like a tail or something, I kind of want to do the super fast way and you're having trouble, could I actually just do it the long way where I create a control, group it, and then constrain it and move it over that? Yes. Matter of fact, you can do this in a lot of really slow ways. If you actually realize if I create a control and I constrain the control over like this, and I delete the constraint and realize, oh crap, I didn't pad it. What you can do is you can just create the pad separately and say driver, driven, and move the pad over separately and delete the constraint on that. And it's like, well, what the hell does that do to me? I got two different things. Well, they both have the same orientation. So if I actually, did I move it to the wrong area? I did. Let me say driver, driven. I can now just parent the control right underneath the pad, and since they have exactly the same orientation, they'll nullify each other. See? So yeah, I can move them one by one. I don't have to do them all together. I gotcha. Yeah. I saw that look of fear in your face. What was your question? No? No questions. Oh, okay. Cool. The good thing about this is that this is a much more advanced way of what we're going to be covering on our project. It's required. I'm just naming this real quick. We're only going to have to do the wrists for the basic system, for the requirements, or the hands. Okay. So these controls, didn't they need to be parented to each other for the back? Yes, they did. So they had to look like something like this. These controls have to be the same way. So I'm going to grab my local and then parent it to the control. You have to preserve the pads in there too. So I'm going to say local to control. See, I'm keeping the step ladder on here. Local to icon. Local to icon. See, that's still the same staircase. And I grab this guy. You see how they all move up together? But I can't accidentally select the pad. That's the whole point on it. And eventually you just constrain these in the same way you did the other one. I'm going to show you a more practical example. Yes? Right. So they're just right next to each other. No. No, you never have the groups that belong with this system, ever. Because joints are their own system, they're connected to geometry, the controls are constrained into that system. Think of a puppet. Are the sticks on your puppet directly connected to the actual skeleton, like a Muppet? No, there's strings on top of it. The strings are the constraints. So that's why we do that. I'm going to say for this level of this class, you'll never directly parent your controls underneath your joints or vice versa. That's why I'm making a big point when I say, is that a control or a joint? Sure. You're talking about this one here? Well, I mean, like I said, this is the only reason why we're doing this is because we're trying to preserve a different orientation on here. But you see how I can't accidentally grab the pads inside the perspective view? How's the animator animating the character? He's grabbing in the perspective view. They're not going in there. The animator's not going into here. Now, yes, if you're going in the outline, you could accidentally grab the wrong thing. But how often as an animation do you ever do that? Very rarely. You do sometimes, because sometimes you can't find something. You have to dig through it. But that's not a good rig design. You shouldn't have to do that. And sometimes you have to open your computer because it stops working for some reason. You shouldn't have to, but sometimes you do. So, yes, this system is easier, but it has its limitations. This system is more complicated, has its own limitations. You can't pick walk through this guy. You can't press up and down a keyboard and move through because it goes from pad to control to pad control and things like that. Okay? Cool. So let me show you where we're going to apply that. We're going to go to our hand system, and we're going to actually go and create our hand. So this is what we're going to create here. You see how there's an arm control here? And then there's a hand right there. You see how it kind of moves along with each other? This is what we want to create. This is going to be local oriented. So on this project, you're only going to be required to create 2 local oriented controls, not even a chain. Now, if you wanted to make extra credit fingers, there's a finger system where you can control each knuckle. That you would do a local orient. If you, like in week 4, if you want to do the ears, doing local orient ears would be one of those. I'll give you 2 options in week 4, the ear or stretchy system for the ear. I cover that later on. Okay? This week, we got plenty of stuff for you to get extra credit on. Okay. So let's do that. Believe it or not, this is actually a lot easier than what I just covered. Okay. So we need to create our control icons for this. So I am going to create a circle that's going to hover above the hand. Yes, we have a separate hand and an arm. It makes gimbal walk happen less often. That's why I have that. I know animators that absolutely love to have the hand and arm as one control. So you translate the arm and you rotate the hand. It causes other issues. So I can do that, but like I said, in here I want you to know the reason why I don't do that. So we're going to create a control. It's also easier to rig it this month. So I'm going to create a circle, okay, and I'm going to group it. Now this time I'm actually going to name these guys. This is going to be my left, and it's going to be my hand local, because it's a local or a hand control, and this is going to be my left hand icon, okay? I want to move this over to match this guy here. Come on, I don't want to grab the IK. I'm going to hide the IK for now. This guy. It is not exactly world. We want to match that. Even if it was world, I would still want to match it because the other hand's going to have a different orientation regardless. It's going to be inverted like that. Okay? So I'm going to grab my driver, which is my hand joint, because I want to match that orientation, and then I'm going to grab the pad. I'm going to use that parent constraint, which is right here, and hit apply to snap it over there. See? I did not grab the control, I grabbed the pad. So I'm going to delete my constraint. Now, I'll tell you right now that this control, from an orientation standpoint, is correct. Is this an animator-ready control? It's zeroed, isn't it? But there is something there. If you're an animator, are you happy with this control? Why? It's in the arm. It's hard to see. Is it going to get confused between the arm control and the hand? Shouldn't it be above the hand if it's going to control the hand? It will eventually have the finger controls on there too. They'll have the finger curls. You saw that from the earlier example, like when I first showed off today. That's awful. Now, if this was controlling both the arm and the hand, maybe it wouldn't be that bad. But it is a problem. So, if this was a back control, could I do this? Here's a better one. I can do this if it's a back control, but what do I have to do to get it correct, to fix it? Because there's something wrong here. The pivot point. I got to move the pivot point back. It's the same nature. We just have a pad above it. It has a new world. That's it. So I move it down and I make my polygons. I just want you to know your questions are getting more and more on point as you're going on. So you're doing good. You're absolutely right, Andrew. You're getting closer and closer to pinpointing your questions and answers. I know it can feel like I'm always trashing on you guys and everything every come in, but you are getting closer and closer, and you're being very daring with your questions. You're not fearful of answering for being wrong. That's good. Okay, so it's not. You don't have to reset the pivot point. You just hold down D and V and move it back over, just like you would do with the neck. You know how we move the neck up and move the pivot point back down? That's it. And now I just freeze it. Whoop, see? That is a valid control. Now, it looks weird when I look at it now, but when we look at the hand, and he's got these giant sausage fingers and everything like that, that looks fine. As an animator, wouldn't that illustrate that that's a hand control? Yeah. Could I do a turkey hand where I can trace the outline of your fingers, like you did for Thanksgiving and things like that, and do that and put that above it? Yeah, you could, but you probably would have to do the whole move the pad, move the control over separately if you're doing that. You're right, Greg Andrew. He said reset. Reset's a whole different thing than freeze. So I'm like, let me make sure he's got that one right. But that's absolutely correct. This does have some history. I'm going to delete that. Now this guy is pretty much almost finished. As a orientation purpose, this guy is done. But we have to connect it into the hand, so I'll take a little bit more. you guys have any questions on creating a local-oriented control? I know you need to practice it. You need to get in there and make some mistakes. I understand that. Hopefully, you get that today. You definitely will get to there by Tuesday, for campus students, that is. You'll definitely get to there by Tuesday on that. This is the one system that, like I said, there's two systems this month that are weird. This is this one, and the RFL we're going to cover on Tuesday, but the RFL is not hard. It's just, once I explain why you do it, it's like, oh, yeah, I would never have thought of that before, because it's a completely way. This is the first one where you start dealing with offsets. It's the closest thing you're going to come to math in my class this month. Okay, so that being said, now we want to connect these guys in. So I have a scene here that has this already ready to go. Okay, so this guy has our hands in here. Now, what we have to do here is we need to make sure that the hand is dominating, the hand icon is dominating a hand joint. Oh, God damn it. Okay. The hand control is dominating the hand joint. Okay? We are going to do this through a parent constraint. Driver, driven, and then we're going to say apply on here. Now watch this. When I grab my hand, do you see how it's moving the hand joint up and down? Correct? You can see that? It's moving back and forth. He's like, you can't see me. Like that. Okay, cool. Watch when I grab my arm, though. It's supposed to do this. Why? Well, because the parent constraint's locking out translation and rotation, which is preventing it. Look at the joint. It's trying to move. It's like, don't go away. You see how it's trying to move? It's rotating. I want to go over there. But the constraint is doing what its namesake is. Constraining, locking out, preventing it from moving. We do want these to move together, correct? Sounds like a trick question. Wait, in our industry, is it possible that I can have a separate hand from an arm? I'm thinking Baymax. His hand could shoot off and punch people in the face. I'm thinking Evil Dead. Ash's hand came off and started like doing obscene gestures to him and things like that. We work in a weird industry. You could absolutely do that. Even in Pirates of the Caribbean, the first film, he had a zombie's hand cut off in his arm, or his arm cut off in one of his wardrobe that came alive and things like that. It is possible to happen. In this example, do we want that to happen on this character? No. So we do need to connect these back up together on there. And there's a reason why I use a constraint to dominate this, is because I want to have that ability to turn it on and off. You're not going to be required to do the on-off switch thing unless you want to do extra credit. And I have a podcast on that to do that. It's called local. It's called a local world hand, and you can see it. It's under here under 2.2. It says here extra credit, local world hand. So that's something you can do extra credit to. That's 5% extra credit. Yes, you can only get 10% extra credit or stuff, but I'm always happy when you put more stuff in there. Okay. Cool. So this is where I start coming up with my analogies of plumbing and electricity. That being said, the arm has two types of values flooding down through. Hot and cold water. Translation and rotation, correct? Can you translate and rotate joints? Inherently, can you translate and rotate joints? Like, no. That's true, that's true. I'm not talking from a mechanic. I'm not talking about rigging stand. I'm just talking about joints and them. Yes. Yes, but no. Yes, no. Okay, so that being said, we have values coming through down here, like this. And we're using constraints to connect these together to begin with. We did the padding system and stuff like that to make them move together. So this is the end of the line here. To me, this system here is like a new bathroom we're extending onto our house. The values stop here, and we want to take this water system and hook it back into the new bathroom we have on it, right? So we want to plug that in. Well, what's controlling the hand now? These pads. This pad here has complete control over the hand right now, because this pad is controlling the control that's controlling the joint. So if I take my last joint of my arm here, the waist, and then command select the pad, It's very important it's the pad, not the control. And then I go in here. Now I do need to turn my offset back on because they're not the same orientation. And I hit apply. Watch what happens now. See how now the hand moves? The hand control moves along with the arm. And it still dominates the hand. See? That's what you're required. It's actually a pretty easy fix. The one that students make a mistake is they'll put it back on the control, which you don't want to do because now you can't animate the control. That's why I'm being so picky about what you're constraining, that you're not constraining to something you need to animate later. Is the animator ever going to grab the pad and animate it directly? No, because it has crazy weird values. We don't want them to do that. So, can they accidentally? Yeah. You know, like I said, the whole you shouldn't put a fork into the electricity socket. You know you're not supposed to do that. Has people done that before? There's a reason why they tell you in school not to do it. Someone did it. So, you know, there's a reason why there's a giant yellow sticker on your power supply. I'm an old arcade kid from back in the day in the 80s, and there's a company called Neo Geo, and they had these giant seizure warnings over all their games because someone accidentally had seizures from one of their games. That's why. There was always a joke, oh, there's a seizure warning on the game. All the other games have as much flashing screens as they do. Someone won a lawsuit, and that's why it was there. So that being said, this system is pretty much ready because we're just connecting into our pad. That's required on here. So that is like 2/3 of your 25% for your hand. The final third is doing the finger controls, which I do not have time to cover today. But it'll be part of your integrated assignment to go over set-driven keys, creating attributes, and systems like that. If you are done with your week 1 assignment and with one project, then where I would expect you to be today is having the arms IKs done, the shoulders and the arms, and have the controls for those. And you've got the local oriented systems in place. Maybe not the finger controls, but the local oriented ones. That puts you in a good place to finish by Tuesday. Okay? There's a reason why I definitely give you to Thursday on the second week, because if it does extend, you have all the third week to work on binding on there. Okay? Sound good? How many people are pretty close to finishing week 1? Good. Good. That's a good, like, 80%. Awesome. So, yeah, you will have integrated assignments that'll take you away from doing your finishing up week 1, but get your week 1 and really push to try to start on your week 2. I will say right now, if you get your IKs in there and get your hand control, not your hand control, but you get your arm and your shoulders done, which really isn't a very long thing, I would say you're still in a good spot. You're not awful. I want to give you that whole week. So I'm trying to make sure you're proactive, because if you actually have that Thursday and that Saturday to work on your binding's going to take a lot more time. Binding's a gray area because it's like painting. I can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take because it is something where, does this look right? It's more an aesthetic type of thing in a lot of cases. So I'm just kind of hit it up now. Finish your stuff. I know you're under pressure for VSD because you have class tomorrow as well for VSD. I know I'm pushing you guys, but I'm just trying to give you guys, wouldn't it be great to have a whole week to do your own stuff? I think that sounds awesome. That sounds like a nirvana. That's amazing. So, the third week Hall of Fame. So, I'm not saying there's not like a magical extra week, but if we crush everything into 2 weeks, then you do actually have extra time onto it. So, I mean, like I said, I live in a land of like fantasy. So, either way, I always plan on good intentions that we're going to get the stuff done ahead of time. Okay, and that's pretty much what I got. Do you guys online have any questions? The campus guys can take off. Okay, Adonis. Andrew, do you have any questions? Okay, just remember, your due dates are not changed. If you want to attack to the same due dates, you're more than happy to, but you do not have to do that. If you want to send me your work to be critiqued, you can send me you can either send me a Google Drive or Dropbox link through Discord, and I will critique it by the next day, which in this case would be Sunday because it's Saturday. Have a fantastic weekend.